to a donkey, and we would then either trick it or punish it into an agreement. Within 2 weeks, the administration eliminated that terminology from their vocabulary. Until this day, I've not been able to see a single instance in which any senior administration officials were using that type of a language. I view that as an indication of the willingness of the administration to change the atmosphere. And I think the clearest example of that, however, was the message that the president, the unprecedented message, the president gave on the eve of the Iranian New Year in March 2009, a 3.5-minute video message put on YouTube and on the website of the White House, congratulating the Iranian people and the government on the New Year, extending a hand, declaring that it was the intention of the United States to find a new relationship with Iran, but at the same time pointing out that the many problems that exist between the two states could not be resolved through threats, which was again a clear departure from the methodology and the language of the previous administration. Now, the response of the Iranians was very swift. Within a day, the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic, Ali Khamenei, gave a speech in his hometown of Mashhad, in which he spent approximately 40 minutes derailing the United States, criticizing it for every sin that it had committed against Iran from the perspective of the Iranian government, but towards the end giving a very, very small opening, saying that if you change, Iran will change as well, making the argument that the Iranian government had no experience with Obama and were willing to take a small shot and see if it could be different, while expressing skepticism of saying, we don't know who actually makes the decisions in the United States. Is it the president? Is it Congress? Or are there other forces behind the scenes that are actually pulling the strings? It was somewhat disappointing for the administration. They had hoped for perhaps a little bit more of a welcoming message from Tehran. But nevertheless, they clung on to the fact that there was a significant blow to the administration for several different reasons. One, because now Iran was actually incapable of negotiating. The political elite in Tehran were at war with themselves, literally. Here was an opening. If the Iranians wanted to buy, there wasn't much discussion about the exact details of how that would be done. The Iranians agreed in principle that this is something they would agree to do, and they would be willing to schedule another meeting to go over the technical details, would give access to the United States and the IAEA to a site called Fordow that had a mechanism that would even out the risk would be for Iran to ship out these shipments in 3 shipments, 300 kilos, 300 kilos, or 400 kilos each. And every time they shipped out LEU, the diplomatic bet had failed. They had not managed to get the type of a quick victory that they wanted, and as a result, the administration felt that they had no choice but to activate, as they said, with the Iranians with the hope of getting them to agree to the benchmarks, a deal that would be based on the benchmarks of the American deal as presented to the Iranians back in October. Very tense negotiations, at times quite difficult, but at the end of it, Russia and China had given their final okay to a UN sanctions draft in the Security Council. Sitting there between a UN sanctions resolution and a diplomatic breakthrough, the administration chose the sanctions. On the Tuesday after the deal had been struck, 7 weeks before Lula went to Tehran, in which President Obama asks the president of Brazil to help get 1,200 kilos of LEU out of Iran. No mention that it needed to be upgraded into a higher number. No mention of 20% enrichment. An endorsement of the idea of putting it in escrow in Turkey and saying that if you pursue this deal, it would be a significant confidence building measure and it would be significantly adding to US national security. The Turks and Brazilians actually followed that letter from Obama as their guideline for the negotiations. They delivered everything that was in that letter. In fact, as I interviewed Amorim for about 2 hours in Brazil after the negotiations, the Turks pulled out the letter and showed it to the Iranians in the negotiations in order to convince them to agree to the deal, saying that if you agree to the deal, we already have America's agreement that this would go through. So why didn't the administration approve it? Well, fundamentally, it was because of a problem of political space. The administration had run out of political space. Congress was coming at it as a steamroller. Elections were coming up in October of that year, only 5 or so months later. And there was a fear in the administration that if they actually had accepted the nuclear breakthrough, however positive it could have been for creating an opening for better negotiations and addressing the full set of issues, Congress itself would have gone forward with their sanctions anyways. And that would have created a significant conflict within the P5, because those sanctions would be targeting Russia and China and other states that continue to have trade with Iran. That would have created a